for absolutely no reason at all. I'm thinking about leadership on a Tuesday night in November in an even-numbered year. College football needs a commissioner. College football needs somebody at the top of the sport to get everybody to pull in the same direction. And I don't know that it has ever been really more clear, because you are getting to a point where there are so many different competing interests from this conference or that school or whatever, that the best things for the sport are often being left behind in the chase for individual or small group success. The SEC has a vested interest in doing what is best for the SEC. And the same goes for the Big Ten, the ACC, Big 12, Conference USA, MAC, Mountain West, whoever. They all only care about what's best for them and what benefits them as a whole. And when you get to that spot, one, the difference between the haves, the have-nots only grows. And one of the reasons that college football has been so great in 2024 is that, for the most part, anybody can beat anybody on a given Saturday. Liberty hadn't lost a game in 18 months and lost to Kennesaw State. Vanderbilt beat Alabama and Auburn in the same year for the first time since Eisenhower was president. Boise State should have beat Oregon. You could probably even argue Idaho should have beat Oregon. Alabama lost to Vanderbilt, but beat Georgia, who then beat Texas, who Georgia almost lost to Kentucky. Chaos has been fun and interesting, and it keeps people engaged, because even if you don't have a win in 2024, it sure as hell feels as if like the playing field is somewhat even on any given Saturday. And if you can put it together, you can grab a W over no matter who is your opponent. And that's what's been great for the sport. But does anybody involved in college football think that NIL is in a sustainable spot where things are governed correctly and things are being handled the right way? No. Does anybody think that the transfer portal is super awesome, or that the red shirt rules make the transfer portal a super useful situation? No. Does anybody care that the SEC and the Big Ten essentially want to have their own playoff and say, to hell with the ACC, Big 12, Mountain West, Conference USA, American, MAC, Pac-12? No. Sun Belt? No. They don't necessarily care about that, because the Big Ten and SEC care about what's best for them. And to their credit, like, that is the job of the commissioner of the SEC, of the Big Ten, is to look out for yourself. Do what's best for yourself. Essentially, get as much money possible as you can for yourself. And that's just part of being in a business environment. And I have said before, and I will say until the end of time, college football is a business masquerading as a sport. It's a business. And so when you have the leaders of these businesses, all they care about is, how do we get as much money as possible? At the end of the day, they don't care about the product until their bottom line is hurt, until they're not making as much money as they once were. That's when they care about the product. So you need to have somebody above them that is like, hey, the only thing I care about is the product. The only thing I care about is to make sure that college football is still a really good, interesting, entertaining, digestible, accessible product. That's what matters most. But when you get blinders on, when you get so laser focused on, I need to do what's best for my conference, or from a individual athletic department standpoint, my athletic department, my university, and then a step down, my football program. And then from there, my offense, my defense. You lose sight of what matters most, what's at the top. And what is at the top is college football as a whole needs to remain interesting and accessible and digestible and entertaining. And I don't know that there's anybody that looks out for that at the end of the day. And so when you get to a situation where it's like, okay, we know that there are, I mentioned, we talked about this last week, where everybody in the sport knows that the targeting rule sucks, right? Like, everybody knows that is, it's a bad, it's easily interpreted incorrectly. It is somewhat too heavy-handed, that there is no margin for error on either the player or the official side. That the rule, like even the rule written as when in doubt, it is targeting. Like, well, that's not really, like, it's not when in doubt, it is false start. Like that's just the way that the rule is written. And I understand that the rule, the good intentions of the rule, but everybody knows that sucks. But there's a long list of things that everybody knows sucks. Everybody knows that the transfer portal opening at the end of December, or not even at the end of December, at the end of the college football season, before bowl games are played, sucks. Everybody knows that having an early signing period in December means coaches get fired earlier in the season, which means coaches get hired earlier because you got to keep the recruiting class. Like, the whole calendar sucks. The whole schedule sucks. And part of that is because you have to work around that, hey, all of these kids are supposed to be college students, right? Like, the reason that the transfer portal opens in December and then closes 30 days later is because you got to get kids into a university, and there's a process that is involved with that. You've got to get them to apply and be accepted and schedule their classes and get them moved and all of that stuff. But right now, that timeline sucks, and everybody knows that it sucks, but because everybody looks out for number one, everybody looks out for, I've got to do what's best for me, nobody looks out for what is best for the sport. Nobody says or has the power or the authority to say, hey, we all know that this is trash, so let's do something about it. Let's find solutions. In college football, for a really long time, because we frankly kind of let idiots run it for a very long time, thought that, like, hey, let's play a dozen games, and then we'll let people who went to journalism school at Syracuse, Northwestern, and Missouri, and Ohio all decide who the actual best team is. No. We won't put them on a field together and have them play one another. I'll just tell you who's best, and then that will be it. What could possibly be wrong with that scenario? And then it got like slightly better, and then it got slightly better. And it was like, well, hell, you know what would be cool is if we had computers pick who the two best teams were. And then you watched ass kicking after ass kicking, and it was like, maybe these computers don't know who the best team is. So then they added like an extra game, and then we got to the college football playoff, and there was 4 teams. And then we recognized, like, well, wait a second, the people choosing these games aren't very good at this. Maybe we should expand it to expand the margin of error. And eventually at 12 teams, we're going to be like, well, wait a second, you guys kind of suck at that too. But if you had somebody on top, and I don't know who that person would be, by the way, because things are so fractured, not dissimilar to like what you might see on an election night, is that, let's say, for instance, Nick Saban was like, I would like to be the college football commissioner. I would like to be tasked with getting everybody on board, on the same page, agreeing that these are the best things for the sport and pulling in the same direction. it would be very easy for somebody to say, well, you only care about the SEC because you were the coach at LSU and Alabama. And then somebody might say, well, wait a second, you have strong ties to Michigan State. Maybe you are only caring about Michigan State, or you were an assistant coach at Ohio State, or you were at the University of Toledo. How? Because everybody's cynical, everybody is skeptical, and everybody only cares about number one. So I don't even know. I think people recognize that there should be somebody in a situation like this, that somebody should have that title of college football commissioner, and their job is to be a good steward of the sport. I don't know that there is somebody that commands so much respect from so many different entities that have differing priorities, differing interests, that you can get them to say, yes, I'm willing to look past what's best for me for the benefit of the sport. I don't know if that person exists, but I think that there needs to be some sort of crusade to say, like, hey, we can all agree that Greg Sankey is going to look out for what's best for the SEC. And Brett Yormark is going to look out for what's best for the Big 12. And Jim Phillips for the ACC and Tony Petitti of the Big 10. We're all going to look out for ourselves. So the key to knowledge is to know thyself, right? You can know that I'm not man enough, mature enough, whatever the case may be, to put aside what's best for me. I'm going to have ulterior motives, and I can admit that. So let's bring somebody in that we can all agree is a good steward of the sport, and have those conversations and look to them to lead the charge on what's best for the sport going forward. I think that needs to happen, but everybody's got so much self-interest that I don't know that you're ever going to see it, but I think it's needed and would be a really big help and a good addition to the sport, is having that kind of top dog to take the bullets, to be the shield, but then also be an agent of change when that situation calls for it. I just don't know that I'm optimistic that we'll ever see it. That'll do it for today's episode of the Daily Huddle. Appreciate you making us a part of your day, however it is, or wherever it is you're doing so. If you are watching on YouTube, hit the subscribe button. Make sure you're getting all the great college football content we're pumping out. If you're listening on the podcast feed, drop a 5-star review. Goes a long way in helping out the channel. I'll see you tomorrow for another episode of the Daily Huddle.